Time now to go to the international papers. Elena's with us, and of course, the riot basically in Egypt dominating many of the papers today, aren't they?
Yes, it really is. Have a look at this Guardian front page. They've quite a strong picture of a part of a football stadium in flames after that riot in Port Said in Egypt broke out between the fans, of course, of two rival Egyptian football teams. Now, they're looking at analysis on the inside saying, is this about more than football? Is this really about Egyptian politics and about the security breach that's been left after the fall of the Mubarak regime? They point out there's a few factors that have led to this. A lot of the police, after the fall of Mubarak, were purged because they were thought to be too close to him. So they were removed from their jobs and replaced by the military. That means they're very stretched and very short of resources. Also, lots of police who supported Mubarak refused to go back to work after the revolution. They simply walked out, leaving them even shorter, of course. Now, some of the fans that the Guardian's correspondent has talked to says that the military just stood there during this riot, did nothing. It wasn't that there were none there, no security people there, but some of them just refused to get involved. They reckon that might have been because the fans of Al Ahly, the Cairo club that was involved in this clash, at a previous match a couple of nights before, they'd all been chanting slogans against the military regime, and as a sort of reprisal for that, the soldiers refused to get involved there. The Egyptian newspaper Aram says in their article on the subject, they quote the Muslim Brotherhood, saying that the whole incident was sort of staged, possibly, according to them, by the military and police to try and give them more of an excuse to once again crack down on ordinary civil life in Egypt.
Now, we've also been talking today about a leaked NATO report on the Taliban. Quotes Taliban insurgents themselves are saying Pakistan continues to support them. How have the papers reacted to that one?
Well, there's an interesting piece from The Guardian's Simon Tisdall. He calls the leaking of the report about the same as rolling a grenade into a packed room. Now, of course, that's because the relationship between the US and Pakistan is so tense already. And this report, as he said, quotes a number, about 4,000 Taliban insurgents, lots of whom say they are still receiving direct support and help from Pakistan. Pakistan, of course, have furiously denied this. But the Guardian piece says that this means it might be more likely that other countries will join France in pulling its troops out of Afghanistan more quickly, the more that they become convinced that the Taliban are ready to, they're playing a waiting game, if you like, and they're ready to take control of the country again as soon as NATO troops pull out. So it looks more and more likely that the whole nearly 10 years of war will have been a waste if that happens. And that means that today's NATO summit, of course, will be even less likely to reach any kind of positive conclusion for NATO and for the Americans, because it looks more like more of their allies will start pulling out. The Times also is having a look at how this report has gone down in Pakistan. They say the government there is absolutely furious and has denied anything might happen, anything is going on, that they're supporting the Taliban. But the government in Pakistan is so unstable anyway that this might further destabilise them. We've had rumours for weeks of a possible military coup in Pakistan as if Ali Zardari's government looks more and more like it's not in control, and this can only fuel those rumours further.
We're talking of wars, to a war that happened 30 years ago or so now, but the Falklands are all back on the front pages again.
Yeah, this is because some British ambassadors, some British diplomats have accused Argentina of trying to economically isolate the Falklands. This is reported by The Guardian. They say Christina Kirchner's government has publicly threatened to block the only flight that flies to the Falklands. The only commercial flight goes once a week from Santiago in Chile. And now Kirchner has said she wants to block its access to Argentine airspace, which would completely isolate those islands entirely. Now, there's an interesting article in La Nación which shows how actually Kirchner's point of view on this is becoming less and less popular in Argentina itself. Until very recently, it was considered almost taboo to say that anything in that country, that Falklands were not Argentinian. There's an article there by a conservative commentator saying, really, this has gone on too long. People in the Falklands speak English and eat fish and chips. It's despotic patriotism on the part of Christina Kirchner to try and get them back.
OK, and finally, only one big story in the US. It's all about Facebook.
It is. Huffington Post, very excited about this today, along with lots of the rest of the US media, talking about what a huge value it could possibly have. They're talking about what's specific about Facebook's strategy that's made it so successful. When it was born, there were loads of other social networking sites, and now all of its rivals like MySpace have fallen by the wayside. They say it's because Facebook is so good at forcing you to give up your personal information. People don't really understand privacy settings. They're complicated, and that means they know a great deal about you and then can sell that very specific information to advertisers. There's another piece, though, in the Daily Daily Beast, saying that the Facebook isn't really worth all of this money. And the reason why is that we as users are wising up to it. They think we're realising how privacy settings work. We're starting to get very cynical about how much personal information Facebook has. There's starting to be a major backlash. And as a result, people aren't necessarily taking themselves off the site, but they're taking their personal information off, they're closing settings down, and thus making it more difficult for Facebook to get material to sell to advertisers.
She mentions fish and chips, and I've got the smell of vinegar in my nose. I can't help it. Elena, thanks a lot. Elena Casas with the International Papers.